Hello and welcome to our week 3 session of Photoshop. I'm so glad you could join me, Edward, and hopefully we'll have a few other students joining us very soon. We're going to dive right into talking about image compositing, which is a really fantastic and important thing for you graphic designers to learn, because it's one of those things that you'll be asked to do over and over and over again as an entry-level graphic artist, as you're in your first graphic design gig. I just want to check in with you guys really quick and give you all an update on what's going on with the class and how you all are doing. And well, you're doing fabulous. Thank you for continuing to participate, even though I know our classroom's a little bit on the empty side since we've had students taken out of this class and put into the sociology class. So I appreciate you all who are continuing to participate in the discussion boards and continuing to turn in your work on time and come to my multi-sessions, which is great. So thank you for continuing to stay active, even though we are a little bit on the on the quieter side since we have so few students. But well, information that you guys are getting is continuing to be really, really important because this is all things that you are going to be using in your careers as graphic designers. So a really important note before I dive into talking about our week 3 work is just a reminder that the class is almost over. We are now more than halfway done, which means next week is going to be week 4. And week 4 is when everything is due. There's no exceptions, no options after that. Saturday, midnight, Mountain Time, week 4 is when you will get booted out of the classroom. You'll no longer have access to the classroom, and if you're in the middle of uploading your assignment, you will not be able to continue to turn it in because the classroom will kick you out. So that's why it's really important to maybe even consider thinking now about your week 4 assignment. And I really, really like to strongly encourage everyone to turn their week 4 work in early. Like ideally just turn in your week 4 work on like Tuesday of week 4 or Wednesday of week 4, because you know how it is. Things always end up happening, especially really close to a deadline. What if your computer were to malfunction and maybe decide to not turn on? What if you had a family emergency or a medical emergency or a work emergency? And those emergencies kept you from turning your assignment on time. Week 4 is worth 185 points. So that means that if you're holding on to an A in this class, your A is going to drop down to a C if you don't turn your week 4 work in. Similarly, if you're at a B, which I hope not, this is your first graphic design class. This should be the easy, fun class. So if your grade is dropped down to a B, definitely contact me, and I want to do whatever I can to help you get that grade back up to an A. But that B is going to go down to a D if you don't turn in your week 4 work on time. So, and the thing is, I wish there was exceptions. I wish there was something I can do if a student has a technical difficulty that prevents them from turning their assignment in on time. But just like in real life, deadlines for school, like these final week 4 deadlines, are hard deadlines, and there's nothing we can do. We absolutely cannot accept work that's submitted past Saturday at midnight. That's why it's really, really important for you to get that work in early and avoid any issues that may come up. What else do we have? I just hope that you all are thinking about your portfolio, and I hope you all are thinking about your future as graphic designers, getting jobs, because now your first graphic design class is almost over, which means you now have skills in, making vector illustrations and raster illustrations and using typography and doing retouching and doing compositing and eventually making a poster design. And all of those skills are things that you can then go out and start looking for jobs with. Yeah, and you might be thinking, wow, after only one class? Yes, everything that you learned in this class is things that you can use in a job. So if you're looking for a job, hey, why not start looking now? Why not, hang your shingle on Fiverr.com or Upwork.com or any of those freelancing job sites, and get a little side gig, get a little side income happening while you're doing your schoolwork. That way you have a little side money. Maybe you can even make some little tutorials and post on YouTube and get some passive income going. And then you have, your design work out there, your freelance storefront out there, and you're doing school and you're doing your day job, and you're showing that you are not just a student graphic designer, but that you're a professional graphic designer. And then by the time you graduate, not only will you have 2 years of school experience learning graphic design, but you'll also have 2 years of actual freelance work experience. And that's gonna not only make for awesome portfolio pieces in your portfolio, but that's going to be very attractive to potential employers, because these days employers are always putting needs at least 1 year previous experience, needs at least 2 years previous experience, and you can actually get that previous work experience while being in school at the same time doing freelance gigs. Okay, so I want to turn it over to you. And since you're in the class, Edward, do you have any questions before I get started, or anything that you need one-on-one help with, or anything at all?
No, I'm just kind of dabbling in week 4 already.
Oh, congratulations. So you're ahead of everyone.
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. Well, that's great.
I've already got everything for week 3 turned in.
Oh, wow, great. Hey, do you mind if I just pop into the grade book and take a look at your work?
Not at all.
Okay, perfect. Let me just open it here. And I know that for you, Edward, you are ahead of everyone, but I do have to devote this class time to talking about the week 3 assignment and demonstrating how it's done. So I apologize for that, but if any questions come up while we are doing that demo, definitely let me know.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I just got my stuff finished and turned in. It's just, I'm not saying it's top grade, but.
Okay, good. Okay, so there's some stuff we can talk about.
I might need to change or something.
Yeah. So an important part of the rubric for the week 3 assignment says that you have to use lighting and blending modes. So if we go here at the rubric, you'll see it's asking you properly composited 4 images. So you composited 4 images, that's good. Then use the necessary adjustment layers and blending modes to make the subject appear cohesive with the background. And that is what I'm not seeing here. I'm not seeing the use of adjustment layers and blending modes to make the subject appear cohesive with the background. Right. And so that would be a needs improvement. And then number 4, adjustment layers and blending modes used. So because that's not there, and let me check the size. That size looks good. I would need to do this. And so you're going to end up with an 85 out of 120 if you turn it in as is. So I can demonstrate how to do the lighting and the adjustment layers on these, if that's going to help you and if you want to resubmit it.
Yeah, that's going to help me a great deal, because I was wondering why my little, I don't know what it is, it's a monkey or something.
It's a lemur.
It's kind of not attached to the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and in my demonstration, that's what I'm doing today. I'm going to be telling you guys how to get it to all blend. Now, something else that's a little bit of a problem is there's a lot of distortion happening with his hands here.
I know, I use the warp tool.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea. Don't do it. I mean, it just looks bad.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have you turn in something that looks good than something that looks bad, right?
Right.
So
you see, I kept my layer there for the way he actually sits.
So what we're gonna do is first, and I would strongly encourage you to write down notes as I go through how to fix this. And for those of you who are watching the recording, if you're worried that, oh no, Carly's not gonna show us how to cut these images out, I'm gonna take you step by step through how to do this from the beginning. I'm just helping Edward with his right now, so stay tuned. So I'm gonna Command T on your broom here, Command T to rotate it so that it fits in his arms. And then we have a lot of cleanup that's going to need to be done on this broom. So one, we kind of want to make it look like the broom is kind of in his hands a little bit. So what we can do is overlap a finger or two. And by clicking on the layer mask, that's the black and white shape on the broom, and then hitting the brush, we're going to use a maximum hard brush and make sure that we're painting with pure black. And so we can check the darkness, the pure blackness by going to D and hitting D on your keyboard. That resets the foreground and background colors to pure black and white. And then I can hit X, and that makes the black my foreground color. So D to reset my black and my white, and X to make that black my foreground. And so what I'm doing is I just erased a little bit of the broom there so his thumb is overlapping. And then here I'll just erase a little bit so it kind of looks like he's gripping the top of the broom there. And I can also just erase a little bit here, and I'm using my color black, and so his knee is overlapping a little bit. And so same with this, I can make his knee overlap a little bit, and that looks a lot more natural.
Yeah.
But the next thing we want to do is fix that. Ooh, there's a lot of sound happening in the background there. So what I'm going to do is just mute you all real quick. And then, Edward, what I want to do with yours, I really didn't do a good job on that. I just need to fix that a little bit. Okay. Now, your masks themselves are a little bit on the messy side. And we know they're messy because we can see these white pixels around the outside of our object. So I would recommend going in with a black brush, and I'm just holding down the shift button. And if you hold down the shift button, it makes a straight line. And I'm getting rid of all of those excess white pixels that are around the outside of the brush. And I'm just painting, making sure my opacity is at 100%, making sure that my flow is at 100%, and I'm hitting, and I'm just painting to get rid of those ugly, unsightly white pixels. And so you get the idea here. I'm just painting on the layer mask itself, and then zooming in really, really close, and then getting rid of those white and light colored pixels. Yes, Michael, this is this week's assignment. Edward just wanted some help with his, so I'm just giving him a little bit of help, and then I'm going to go step by step through how to do this from scratch. So see here also, these pixels need to be cleaned up a bit. And then it looks like there's some also happening with this monkey. So I'm going to click on the monkey layer. And it looks like just a lot around the edge of the monkey just needs to be smoothed out. So I'm just painting with black on the monkey's layer mask and smoothing out this edge so it doesn't look so pixelated. And so this is going to take you a little while. This is going to take you, zooming in, zooming out, trying to clean up the edges, trying to make them look less pixelated. And then also getting rid of those unsightly white pixels. And I see a lot of those white pixels on this broom. So I'm going to zoom in. And then just keep on painting over those pixels till all those white pixels go away. And same with the hat. I'm going to click on the hat layer. And we have a lot of white pixels here. So we're just going to paint on them. Still needs a little bit more cleanup, but I'm going to give you your own time to work on that, the rest of that cleanup. Now what we have to do is paint shadows on this to make it look like it all blends together. So first I'm going to paint a shadow underneath the monkey. I'm going to click on the background. Then I'm going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer underneath the animal. Then I'm going to hit the letter X. I'm going to get my brush tool out, reduce the hardness all the way down to 0%, increase my brush, and what I paint first is going to look a little bit funny. I'm going to make this kind of spot here, and you might be wondering, oh, that doesn't look very natural. So what we have to do first is squish this spot. This is going to be a shadow. And we squish it, write this down in your notes, this is really important. We squish it by hitting Command T, Command T. Now I'm going to click on the top square and squish it down, click on the bottom square and squish it up. And normally we never resize like this, but we want to distort this circle. We want to make it look like it's like a shadow underneath the lemur. So that's why we're squishing it like this. Next, I'm going to paint actually on top of the lemur to help create a more natural shadow. So I'm going to click on the lemur layer. Then I'm going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer. Then I'm going to hold down the Alter Option button and click on the line between layer 3 and the animal layer. So I'm going to hit Shift Command N, write this down in your notes, you guys. Shift Command N to make a new layer. And then I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the line between layer 3 and animal 4. And now what I'm going to do is paint, see here, to kind of paint like a shadow underneath his legs there. That way it looks like there's been kind of a shadow cast. And we're going to also pay attention to the lighting. So the light is coming from behind and above. So that means there's probably going to be a shadow underneath his hat. There's also going to likely be a shadow under his chin. And probably a shadow under his arms as well. And of course, we don't need the shadows to be that dark, so we are going to lower the opacity. And just doing that, it really showed us that there are some pixels on the broom that need to be cleaned up quite a bit. Now, what I really, though, need is I really need a dark shadow right where his feet are, because we need to obscure that. So I'm going to hit Shift-Command-N again, make a new layer, hold down the Alt or Option button and click on the line between layer 4 and layer 3. Hold down the Alt or Option button and click on the line between layer 4 and layer 3. And then I think we'll just keep it dark like that to obscure his legs. Now I'll paint a little shadow on the hat by clicking on the hat layer and then hitting Shift-Command-N. Holding down the Alt or Option button and clicking on the line between layer 5 and hat 1. And again, the lighting is kind of coming from behind, so I'm just going to kind of click a little shadow on the front. But I don't want the brim because the light coming from the top is going to be hitting the brim. And then we're just going to lower the opacity of it. And then same for the broom. Shift-Command-N to make a new layer. Click Alt or Option and click on the line. And then the lighting is coming from above, so the shadow is going to be underneath the broom. Okay, now we need to do the final requirement, which is adding an adjustment layer. And so something that's good that you used last week, which helps to bring everything together, is the photo filter. So you can go to the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other. Use a photo filter. Increase the density, right? And that's nice. And it'll look much nicer when you clean up the hat. It's the mask on the hat. I'm just going to click on the black layer mask next to the hat layer. And we just got to erase those pixels. Now, another thing you can also do to bring it all together is do like a hue saturation. And so you can click on the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other. Click on hue saturation and see what your design might look like in a completely different color scheme. And so something like that might be kind of cool. Alrighty, so let's now start this project from scratch so that the students who are new to this project understand the basics and understand how to cut things out and put them into a new document. But Edward, first, does that help you? Does that answer your question? And do you have any other follow-up questions after this?
No, actually, all my questions have been answered by that.
Perfect.
I was feeling like I wasn't quite finished with it when I turned it in, but
Cool. Yeah, so now
I had every intention of showing up to class today, so
perfect.
it works out.
Yep, perfect. So now you know what to do and you'll make it even better. So
That's
what
right.
we're going to do to start our project is go to File, New, and we're going to make a document that is in inches. And we want to make it 7 inches wide and 5 inches tall, 72 resolution. And so the reason we're making a document that is so small like that is because you're going to be submitting the Photoshop document, the PSD file, for grading. And if you have a very large, 300 dpi resolution, large size project, it's going to be impossible for you to upload the PSD file because it'll be too big. It'll be like a gigabyte in size, right? So we want a nice small file. You want to show that you can do clean masking and clean compositing. And then you want to submit your PSD file with all of your layers to the grade book so I can see all your layers and I can see that you use masking. Okay, so the assignment is asking you to select one of these animals, one of these hats. So obviously I chose that little capybara, and he's facing kind of 3/4 view, slightly profile. So I need to find a hat that is facing 3/4 view, slightly profile. And so it looks like the only hat available that's facing that direction is hat 3. So I'll use hat 3. Then you need to select a prop of some sort. And then you need to select a background of some sort. Okay, so those are the 3 objects. Now, before we're ready to put these all into a document, we have to learn how to bring images into a document and how to cut them out and how to make them fit, right? So the tool that we're always going to use to bring images into our document is something that you're definitely going to want to write down. It's File, Place Embedded. File, Place Embedded, a really important tool to write down. Now I'm just going to bring in a random image. Now, if I wanted to resize this flower so that it completely filled in my background, where would I click and drag? Should I click and drag on the sides here, the top and bottom here, or the corner? What do you think? I want to. Any guesses?
I would guess the corners.
The corners, and why is that?
Because it would, with I believe the shift key would keep the picture in size, I would say, and not blurry or stretched out.
Okay, well, blurry and stretched out has to do with the resolution, but it won't distort it. Watch what happens if I try to resize this from the side instead of the corner. What has happened? How would you describe that flower now? It looks squished, might be the word, right?
I would think it would be stretched.
Or stretched, that works too, yeah. So we know it's squished or stretched because if we look up at the numbers up at the top of the page here, it says 81% versus 72%. So we always want the width and the height to remain the exact same numbers. So let's bring this back to 72%. And now let's resize this the correct way to fill in the background. And there's going to be a quiz question this week on this. What you're going to do is hold down the shift button. You're going to click on the corner, and while holding down the shift button and clicking on the corner and dragging at a diagonal angle, holding down the shift button, clicking on the corner and dragging at a diagonal angle, you maintain the height and width proportions so it doesn't look squished or stretched. Okay? And as long as you're resizing it and it's staying under 100%, it's not going to look blurry. Now, I accidentally, this happens sometimes. I accidentally let go of my shift button as I was resizing. And that resulted in my width and height numbers changing just ever so slightly. My width is now 80.94 and my height is 80.80. So I need to change those numbers so that they are exactly the same, or else my image is going to look slightly squished or stretched. I'm going to hit enter or return to place those changes. So really important, always make sure that those percentage numbers up at the top of the screen maintain this, the same number. So the width needs to be the same number as the height. Now, and did you see how I'm clicking? I'm holding down the shift button and I'm clicking diagonally. And diagonal is a concept that's a little bit difficult for some students. Many students are familiar with vertical and horizontal. Vertical means up and down, right? And we have a lot of practice dragging our cursors up and down. And horizontal means side to side, like the horizon when you're looking out across the ocean. And you can see the horizon that goes side to side. But diagonal is a little trickier. And so I tell students, picture the roof of your house. Notice how the roof of a house is kind of at an angle, like a triangle. So when you are clicking on the corner and holding down the shift button and dragging with your mouse, imagine dragging along a diagonal. Enter, return. And if you go on the internet, you can find images to help you understand the difference between diagonal, vertical, and horizontal lines. We'll go to Google Images. And here are perfect examples. And so maybe practice placing your cursor on this horizontal line and practice dragging your cursor side to side. And maybe practice dragging your cursor up and down so you get the hang of what that feels like to put your cursor and move it up and down. And then have some practice tracing this diagonal line that's a little bit tricky. And practice tracing your cursor along that angle, along that diagonal angle. Okay, and always reach out if you're having confusion about what I mean by horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. If that's confusing for you, I'd be happy to explain it in another way. So now let's look at the different ways to make selections of this photo shape. So there's many tools in our toolbox to help us make selections. And the easiest selection tools are the marquee tools, which are located in the top left corner of your toolbar. And remember how I said that some of the buttons are roommates together? Well, the rectangle marquee tool is roommates with the elliptical marquee tool. So if you're ever wondering, how do I make a circular selection? I don't see a tool that can do that. You can click on the rectangle marquee tool and you'll see his roommate, the elliptical marquee tool, comes up, and you can select that. So right now, I'm gonna make a selection with the elliptical marquee tool, which is going to create a circular shape selection. And now this is where we're gonna use that word diagonal again, okay? I'm gonna hold down the shift button, and I'm gonna click and drag at a diagonal angle, and that's gonna make a perfect circle. And then I'm gonna let go of my clicker, and I'm gonna let go of my shift button, okay? So if you're having trouble with that diagonal, definitely practice. So I'm gonna hold down the shift button to make a circular selection, and I'm going to click and drag at a diagonal angle. Then I'm gonna go to the bottom of my layer panel, and there's a square with a circle inside of it. And that's the Add a Layer Mask icon. So after making your selection, write this down, you guys. In your notes, write this down. You can use any selection tool you want. You make a selection, and then you go down to the circle, the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layers panel, the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layers panel. And if I were making notes, I would just draw a picture of it. I'd just draw a square with a circle inside of it, rather than write out the whole word square with a circle inside of it. And then I'm gonna click on that. And then, ta-da, I have done my first attempt at image compositing. So what image compositing is all about is it cuts everything that's outside of your selection. It cuts it away. It hides it using something like a stencil. And that's the layer mask. The layer mask is this black and white shape that you're making next to your layer. And everything that's black is erased or cut away. And everything that's white is still there. So you can see the center of my picture is still there because I had made a selection of it. The great thing about layer masks, though, is that you can continue to adjust them as much as you want. And if I double click on this black and white shape here, this mask's properties window comes up, and I can increase the feathering, and I can soften the edge of my selection, like so, to make it kind of blend in a little bit. So that's the mask's properties window. Now, obviously, the marquee tools are only going to be as good as, you know, a circle and a rectangle, right? But our object, as you can see, is not a circle or a rectangle. So cutting them out using a circle or rectangle, you know, it might be good for an interesting artistic concept that you're doing with a design. But for this week's assignment, it's not going to be very good. So what we need to do is find a tool that is appropriate for this flower. So I'm control clicking on the layer mask and then hitting delete to delete it. So in your notes, if you're putting down the different tools that we use for making selections, you can put the marquee tools are only good for circle and square selections. They're not good for organic shapes. Now I'm going to gradually demonstrate these tools from easiest to hardest. So the easiest tools are the marquee tools. Next easiest is the lasso tools. Now your standard lasso tool is going to be kind of cumbersome if you're just using a trackpad. Now I have used the standard lasso tool when I have a Cintiq or when I'm using the Wacom tablet, but if you're just using your trackpad and mouse, okay, so what the lasso tool does is it allows you to trace your shape, and because my finger is very unsteady and because the trackpad is not the easiest, most precise piece of hardware on your computer, the result of me tracing this flower with the lasso tool is that it looks, the selection is not very clean, right? So the lasso tool might be good if you have a Cintiq or something like that, but it's not good if you're trying to make a selection with the trackpad. So now I'm going to go down to this square with a circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel and click, and you can see not very good, not a very good selection. So now I'm going to control click and delete layer mask. Now a tool that's a little bit more precise is the polygon lasso tool. But the problem with the polygon lasso tool is that it's only good for things that have straight edges only. So if we try and select this flower with the polygon lasso tool, it's going to look like a very geometric flower. So watch this. I'm going to click, and all you have to do to draw with the polygon lasso tool is click on 2 points, and it makes a straight line. Click on a third point. Oops, I didn't select the polygon lasso tool. That's why it wasn't working. So there we go. So you just click, and it makes a straight line between those 2 points. Ta-da! Now I've completely enclosed my flower in this selection. And now I'm going to click on the square with the circle inside of it to cut out everything that's outside of the selection. And so the end result is a rather geometric looking flower. So what we've learned so far is the marquee tools are great for either circles or squares. The polygon lasso tool is good for tracing if you have a Cintiq or something that's a little bit more precise than a trackpad. The polygon lasso tool is only good for things that have straight edges only. Now I'm going to control click on the layer mask and hit delete layer mask. The quick selection tool allows you to paint in your selection. We use this in week 2, right? Up at the top of the screen, we have either standard selection, add to selection, or subtract from selection. I'll just click standard selection. And what it does here is it's gonna let you paint your selection, and it's gonna kind of select colors that are similar. Michael just asked, what is the best selection tool for this assignment? And the answer is, it depends on the objects that you choose. So if you choose the magic wand, you're probably gonna wanna use the polygon lasso tool to cut out the magic wand. If you choose like the lemur, you're probably gonna wanna use quick mask to paint him. If you choose that little like hat that's kind of rounded, you're gonna probably want to use the pen tool for that. So it depends, each of these selection techniques depends on the object that you choose, and you have to choose the appropriate selection technique for the appropriate object. Now notice, as I was painting in the selection, it accidentally selected some of that green background. So now you need to go up to the top of the screen and click on the subtract from selection option, and then paint, 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 and get rid of that green that it selected. Now here's the thing, this quick selection technique sometimes results in a very pixelated edge. Let's go ahead and take a look at the square with the circle inside of it. See this pixelated edge? See how jagged it is? That's gonna need to be cleaned up a whole lot before you call it good. Michael, I am going through each of the tools right now. Michael just asked, what's the quick mask tool? This is the first time I'm hearing of this tool. I'm teaching you in class today. And so what I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm showing you the easiest tools first, and I'm gradually getting to the harder tools. I have not yet covered the quick mask tool. You asked me what tool would be appropriate for this assignment, and I just wanted to tell you that it depends on the objects that you choose for your assignment, which tool is going to be appropriate for your assignment. And one of those tools I mentioned was the quick mask tool, which is a tool that I have not had a chance to cover here in class today. But I will as soon as I get through the easier beginner level tools first. I'm gradually going from the easiest tools and gradually getting harder. So the quick selection tool, which I've just demonstrated, is very good for selecting an object that's significantly different in color from the background. The problem, though, is that it sometimes leaves this very kind of jagged, pixelated edge. So that needs to be cleaned up. And the way that you clean up your masks is by painting directly on this black and white layer mask. So I'm going to click on the black and white shape that has appeared next to this layer mask. And if I option click on it, I can actually see the black and white shape itself. Then I'm gonna get my brush tool out, and I'm gonna command +sign and zoom in really, really close. And with black as my foreground color, as my brush maximum hardness and maximum opacity, I'm gonna go in and paint and paint and paint and clean up these edges. Now, I personally think this is tedious, and I would like to rather do anything else other than clean up a really poorly made mask. So that's why it's important to look at an image and think, I wonder if another tool would be better for this particular object. So if you use your quick selection and you find that you just get a very jagged, ugly looking edge like this, maybe you need to ask yourself if another tool would be better. So I'm going to control click and delete layer mask. Or you can just commit to spending then 30 minutes to an hour going in with your paintbrush and erasing those pixelated edges. Now the next tool that we're going to use is going to end up resulting in a much cleaner edge, and that is the pen tool selection. And first what you do is you select the standard pen tool, and then you go up to the top of the screen, and remember, anytime you're making shapes in Photoshop, you have the options of shape, path, or pixels. Shape, path, or pixels. So I'm going to select path, and then what I'm going to use is the pen tool. Click and drag these Bezier curves out to kind of trace inside the object. And the pen tool is a really, really important tool for graphic designers to master, because you use it not only in Photoshop, but in Illustrator and other software programs as well. And it's not intuitive at all, because what you have to do is you have to click on these points and then pull out these handles to get the line to curve. And the handles create the Bezier curve by acting like little magnets that kind of pull the line out. So you're not just tracing like you would with the brush or the pencil. You're pulling out these anchor points to create a curved line. Now there is a game on the internet that teaches you how to use the pen tool, and this is called the Bezier game. And I'll copy this, Command C to copy and paste it. And so I encourage you guys to play the Bezier game to learn how to use the pen tool. This is really important as graphic designers. And so to make a simple straight line, you just click on 2 points, click, click, click. Then to make perfect diagonals, perfect verticals, and perfect horizontals, you keep the shift button held. And then to make the curve, you click and drag to pull out these handles. And these handles create the curved line. Then to change the angle of your curved line, you click and drag, and then in mid drag you hold, after you make it all the way as long as you want it to go, then you hold down the Alt button, change the angle. Click and drag, hold down the Alt button, change the angle, let go of your clicker, let go of the Alt button, click, and that's how you use the pen tool. So play that game, and then it takes you through more things to play with. But I need to continue. So I'm tracing my way around this flower. And I'm staying inside the petal because flowers are very forgiving. Like if you cut too much into it, no one is gonna know. But if you don't cut enough, if you leave the background in, people will see the green pixels of the background and it will look very much like it's just been cut out and it'll look bad. So I'm staying inside the petal. And I've completely enclosed the petal in the path. And then I can turn this path into a selection using the next step, which is very important, the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. You need to write this down because I know you will forget. The Make Selection button at the top of the screen is the only way to turn a path into a selection. If you choose the layer mask option before you hit the Make Selection option, it's not going to work for you. So the steps are, after making your path with the pen tool, you have to go up to the top of the screen and click the Make Selection button. Now what's actually happened is I've selected everything except for the flower. So I need to invert my selection. And the way that I invert my selection is by hitting Shift-Command-I. Write that down. That's a really important shortcut key to write down, Shift-Command-I. And then I'm gonna go to the circle, the square that's inside the circle. So the circle that's inside the square with the circle inside of it. Oh my goodness. And I'm gonna click on it. And ta-da! So that's a much cleaner selection without all of those pixelated, jagged, ugly edges because we use the pen tool, which is much more precise. Now I can definitely see some little areas where I think we want to clean up a little bit. For instance, you know, right here we see a little green. There's kind of a strange angle here. So we can just get our brush tool out. We can click on the layer mask. And then we can zoom in really, really close. And we can start to paint away that green. See, okay, so the pen tool is ideal for objects that have smooth corners and straight lines, like that pink hat that we have for week 3, and like this flower. Now I'm going to Control click and delete layer mask. Now, the cool thing about the pen tool, it shows us that anything that can be used to make a path can be used to make a selection or a layer mask. So remember those awesome custom shapes that we learned about in week 1 at our custom shape library? You can make selections and masks from those shapes. So I'm going to go to my custom shape library. I'll find an interesting like little flower shape. I'm going to make sure that path, not shape, is selected up at the top of the screen. And I am going to make sure I not unsubtract from selection, but rather new layer. And what I'm going to do is draw my shape. And there's my path. So what do I need to do to turn this path into a selection? I need to click the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. I need to select the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. And this is different than the other selection techniques. Now, after I've turned this path into a selection, I can then go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the Add a Layer Mask icon. And that is how you make a selection from a custom shape that you can use with a layer mask. Now the next selection technique I'm going to show you, Control-Click, Delete Layer Mask, is the Quick Mask tool. And the Quick Mask tool is when you use your paintbrush to paint in a selection. This is different from the Quick Selection tool where you're also kind of using a paintbrush. With the Quick Mask tool, though, it's all you. The computer isn't trying to find colors that are grouped together. It's painting only what you tell it to paint. So I'm going to select my brush tool to use the Quick Mask. Select my brush tool. Make sure your opacity and your flow are 100%. Make sure your foreground color is pure black, and your background color is pure white. And make sure your brush is on maximum hardness. And then you are going to hit the letter Q on your keyboard. Obviously not Command Q, because that will quit your program. Just the letter Q by itself. And remember how last week we learned that we could increase and decrease the size of our brush by hitting the bracket keys next to the letter P? Well, we're going to use that a lot. Oh, see, I started painting and I just realized I did something wrong. You guys can tell that that is a fuzzy edge brush, isn't it? And I told you to use a hard edge brush, so I need to go up to the top of the screen and change that to maximum hardness. Maximum hardness. Now I have a nice hard edge on my brush. And so I personally recommend painting big areas first and then doing the details afterwards. So just by hitting Q once, you can see that even though the black is my foreground color, what is actually being painted is this kind of transparent red color. And this is your selection. It's actually letting you like paint your selection. And see how I went kind of outside the leaf there? Michael, you are misunderstanding. I'm not painting the flower. I'm making a selection. This transparent red color that I'm putting on this flower is the selection, and it's going to turn into a selection when I finish what I'm doing. Okay, so I just want you to pay real close attention. I hit B for brush, then I hit Q to start painting in quick mask mode. And then I'm going to turn this quick mask, this kind of transparent red color that's coming up, I'm going to turn it into a selection. So then I can turn it into a mask. Now see how I kind of went outside the leaf here, the petal? I can fix that by hitting X on my keyboard. And by hitting X, I'm now painting with white. And every time I paint with white, you can see it goes away. Okay, so I gotta make my way, hit X again. I have to make my way and completely paint in this flower. And then I can turn this transparent red color into a selection. And you guys, because you will have more time, you'll want to get real close to the edge without going over. I am just going to kind of quickly do this so that I don't bore you guys to death, because I still have to get into actually showing you how to put it all together into a project. So I'm going to hit X and then fix where it went outside the lines. Then hit X again. Okay, now that the quick mask has been completely painted on the flower, I can then turn the quick mask into a selection. And how do I do that? How do I turn the quick mask into a selection? I hit the letter Q one more time. Now you'll notice, because everything except for the flower is selected, that I need to invert my selection. And so look at your notes. What is the shortcut key to invert a selection? It's Shift Command I. Shift Command I. Now, how do I turn this selection into a mask? I go down to the bottom of the layer panel and I click on the square with the circle inside of it. And you can see it needs quite a bit of cleanup. I would say the pen tool is probably more appropriate for this object, but you guys get the idea. So today, the different techniques that we have used so far are the masking, or for the masking are the marquee tools, the lasso tools, the quick selection tool, the pen tool, the shape tools, the quick mask. In your pre-recorded lecture, you'll see instructions on how to use the color range selector and the channel pull. We're going to focus more on the color range selector and the channel pull in DES323 and DES460. So we don't spend a whole lot of time on it here in DES104. But one thing I haven't yet shown you is the clipping mask. And the clipping mask allows you to clip a photo into a layer. And that's what you saw me doing quite a bit for Edward. So I'm going to temporarily turn off my blue flower layer by clicking on the eyeball. And I'm going to make a new layer above the background. And I'm going to get my text tool out. And I'll just use a nice bold font. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this flower shape into the text layer. And I can do that by holding down the Alter Option button, holding down the Alter Option button, write this down in your notes, holding down the Alter Option button, and clicking on the line between the flower layer and the text layer. And so now I've clipped the photo into the text. And you're going to see how this will apply to adding lighting and adjustment layers when we actually do the project, which I'm going to show you now. So to get started with your project, remember, you have to download an animal, a hat, a prop, and a background. You're going to put these on a document that is 7 by 5, 72 dpi. You're going to composite them. You're going to cut them out using masking. And then you are going to use your adjustment layers and your blending mode to get the lighting to all match. So first thing, we're going to go File, New, 7 inches by 5 inches, 72 resolution, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to go to my Downloads folder, and I'm going to start with the background first. Click on the background, and then hit Place. Now I know you will be tempted, you will be so tempted to click on the edge here and drag and squish this image to make it fit your background. Do not do this. If you are scared of clicking and dragging at a diagonal angle because you don't know what that word diagonal means, and clicking and dragging at a strange angle scares you, here's what you can do. You can go up to the top of the screen and you can change the width and the height by hand. So you can type in 70 for your width and you can type in 70 for your height. And then you can adjust it into place like so. And I might just make it ever so slightly larger. So Command T brings up your transform controls, and I'm going to make it 71 height and 72 width. 71 width, I mean. Oh my goodness. There we go. Okay, next I have the background in, and I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm going to bring the animal in. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift button, and I'm going to click and drag on the corner. Rotate as needed, and place him where I want him to go. Now I'm going to bring in the hat. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded, bring in the hat, hold down the Shift button, click and drag, approximate what size the hat should be. We can always fix it later. And then File, Place Embedded, Magic Wand. Hold down the Shift button, click and drag. Now, I personally would like the Magic Wand to be pointing the other direction. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And move it into place like that. Okay, so we have placed all of our elements approximately where we want them to go. And now we have to cut them out. And then we have to use blending modes and adjustment layers to get them to blend together. I'm going to Command + sign to zoom in. And this Magic Wand has only straight edges. So it is an ideal candidate for what tool? For the Polygon Lasso tool. So I'm going to get my Polygon Lasso tool out, and I'm going to stay well inside the outline of this object. I do not want to have any white pixels showing. And now I've completely selected this magic wand. And now what do? I click on the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel, right? Click on the square with the circle inside of it. Now I want it to look like it's being held in his little hand between his toes. So I'm going to get my brush tool out and I'm going to click on that black and white layer mask, remember, which works just exactly like a stencil. And I'm going to erase on the magic wand where his little toe goes. So now it looks like it's kind of sticking out of his toe, like so. Now for this. Now we don't need the inside of the hat because the inside of the hat is going to be covered up by his face. So I'm going to use my pen tool. And remember, click and drag to create the Bezier curve. I've completely enclosed the hat in the path. And now I'm going to go up to the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. And now I'm going to click on the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. Uh-oh, I just realized I hadn't selected my hat first. That's really important. So I'm going to click on my hat layer, make sure it's selected, and then hit the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. Now I'm definitely going to need to touch up that little bit of white pixel right there that's showing. And I need to get rid of a little bit of this. Command plus sign. And then I need to resize it so it fits on his head a little bit better. So I'm going to hit Command T. Work on placing it where I want to place it and also holding down the Shift button and oops, see how I accidentally let go of the Shift button too soon? So I'm going to change both the width and the height to 80 exactly. Rotate slightly. That looks good. We can see a little bit there that I want to erase. And also a little bit here that I want to erase. Okay, now we just need to cut out the animal next. So because he's kind of slightly being overlapped by the hat and the prop, I'm going to temporarily turn off the eyeballs on the hat and prop layer. And then I'm going to Command plus sign to zoom in. And I'm going to use the quick selection tool, the quick mask tool rather, to cut him out. So I'm going to go to my standard brush tool. Make sure my width or make sure my opacity and hardness that are 100%. And then I'm going to hit the letter Q on my keyboard. Using the letter P to make my brush nice and big. And I'm going to start with the big areas. I'll go kind of close to the edge of him first. And then I'll do the smaller areas. Okay, I'm not going to go all the way up to the edge of his fur. I'm going to use a slightly softer brush on his fur to help to create the illusion of his fuzziness. Remember, you can hit X anytime you accidentally go outside the lines. And now I'm going to use a soft edge brush okay, to get the kind of furry quality of his fur. And now I have completely painted him. I now turn the quick mask into a selection by hitting the letter Q on my keyboard. So I'm going to hit the letter Q. And now you can see I've selected everything except for the capybara. So I'm going to invert my selection. And the shortcut key to invert a selection is Shift-Command-I. Shift-Command-I to invert a selection. Now I have to make sure that I have that animal layer selected, or else the layer mask is not going to work. And I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square with the circle inside of it. And ta-da! I have successfully cut him out. And I would like to, I'm just going to erase a little bit of his belly here. There we go, that looks good. And now we're gonna put the hat back on him. We're gonna put the magic wand on him. And now what we have to do is just use our lighting to make it work together. So I'm gonna click on the background layer. And then I'm gonna hit Shift-Command-N to make a new layer. I'm gonna get my brush out and change my brush to maximum softness, 0% hardness. And with it so close to the edge, I know my paintbrush will get cut off. So I'm just gonna paint a line up here and I'll move it down afterwards. So I'm painting, this is the drop shadow that's gonna go underneath him. So I'm painting it and I'm gonna hit Command-T and I'm gonna squish it to put it into perspective. I'm gonna place that right underneath him. Just make it a little bit more like that. And I can slightly lower the opacity just a bit. Now I'm going to click on the animal layer and Shift-Command-N to make a new layer. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key on my keyboard, Alt or Option key, and I'm going to click on the line between Layer 2 and Animal 2. I'm going to click on the line between Layer 2 and Animal 2. And now I'm going to paint underneath his chin. Paint underneath his belly, paint his little paws a little bit. So there's like shadow, because the light is coming from above, right? So I want to make it look like, you know, there's going to be shadow under his hat. And then I'm just going to lower the opacity a little bit. There we go. Same for the hat layer. I'm going to make a new layer, Shift Command N to make a new layer. Alter Option, click on the line between layer 3 and hat 3. There we go. Lower the opacity just a little bit. Again, the lighting is coming from above, so I want the top of the hat to be illuminated, and I want the sides to be dark. And then the magic wand, I'm going to click on Shift Command N to make a new layer above the magic wand. I'm going to hold down the Alter Option button and click on the line between layer 4 and prop 2. See, I'm just going to paint a little bit of shadow. Like so. It can even be like his shadows kind of blocking the magic wand a bit. And then what I want to do is bring it all together with an adjustment layer. So I'm going to click on the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other at the bottom of the layer panel. And I'm going to click on Photo Filter. You know, increase your density. And you're welcome to choose any of these filters that you want. And then what you are going to save and turn in is going to be a PSD file, not a JPEG, because I need to see all your layers. I need to see your layer masks. And so I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I have a little folder for my DES104 schoolwork. And I'm going to call this DES104_week3_ your name. Format Photoshop, so it'll end with .psd, all your layers, and then you're going to hit save. And that PSD file is what you're going to turn in. And as long as you made it 5 inches by 7 inches, 72 resolution, it's not going to be a huge file, and it should be pretty easy to upload. Any questions at this point? Okay, you guys. Well, this is really important. Your assessment this week is going to be an actual quiz. And it's not a quiz that you have to study for. It's something called a didactic quiz, where it'll give you like a little reading. And you read a little bit, and then you answer the questions based on the reading. And it will take you an hour at the most, but honestly, you'll probably get it done in about 10 minutes. And so you don't have to study for it. Familiarizing yourself a little bit with the types of selection tools might be good. Just here are some things that you will want to know so that you can be successful with your assignments and with your careers as graphic designers, really. After painting a quick mask in quick mask mode, how do you turn that quick mask into a selection? It's a shortcut key. You hit the letter Q on your keyboard, right? The letter Q on your keyboard. After making a path with the pen tool, how do you turn that path into a selection? You click the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. The Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. When making a path or a custom shape, there are 3 options available in the menu at the top of the screen. What are those 3 options? They are shape, path, and pixels. Shape, path, and pixels. What is this? This is the adjustment layers icon that gives you access to all of the adjustments. What is a common mistake when resizing? Anytime you resize from the edge instead of the corner without holding down the shift button, not checking the width and the height at the top of the screen, and resulting in images that end up looking squished like this. Now, this week's discussion board post is all about non-destructive editing. And non-destructive editing is the professional way to work in Photoshop. It's a way to work where, just like we talked about in week 1, where every change you make to your project needs to be made on separate layers, which means you're going to end up with 50 different layers, for many projects. But by making your changes on separate layers, you are then able to go back and make changes to your project without it being a big deal. So let's say you are, you're working on a magazine cover, and you colored the dress green, and you cut out the model, and you put her on a beach. And then your editor comes back to you and says, all your typography is great, but I don't want her dressed green anymore. I want it back to the original color, and I don't want her on a beach anymore. I want her back in the studio setting. If you had been working destructively, that means you have to start the whole project all over again. But if you have been working non-destructively, all you have to do is delete the mask, delete the color layer, and in 2 seconds, you can deliver the new version of your project. So your discussion board post this week asks you to evaluate these 2 artists, Alan Johnson Smith and Lakeisha, and there is a right or wrong answer here. Lakeisha is the person who is working more non-destructively. If you say Alan is working more non-destructively, you will lose points because that's not the case. Lakeisha is actually working more non-destructively. But you then have to provide your own explanation and analysis for why Lakeisha's technique is better than Alan's technique, okay? So it's very, very important that you specify that Lakeisha is the correct way of working. Cool. So even though I primarily used photo filter adjustment layer, a little hue saturation adjustment layer, and I didn't use many blending modes. I just used normal and then dropped the opacity. These are the types of adjustment layers and blending modes that you are welcome to use for this project this week. And I go in depth onto what each of these adjustment layers do and what these blending modes do in my pre-recorded lecture from Monday. So please do watch my pre-recorded lecture for in-depth explanations of what all of these adjustment layers and blending modes do. And I really, really want to encourage all of you guys to please, please, please remember to back up your native files, because pretty soon you're going to be taking a capstone class, and let's say your computer doesn't turn on one day. If you have your your files safely stored on an external hard drive, that means even if your computer's not working, you can still access your files on an external hard drive. Or if you've been uploading them to a cloud drive like Google, that means your files are safely on Google Drive. Do not have your files only in one location, because that is a recipe for disaster. You know, some people think that, oh, I just moved my files to an external hard drive. No, because there's a chance that external hard drive might decide to quit too. So not only do you want to move your files to an external hard drive, you want to copy your files to an external hard drive. So not only are they on an external hard drive, but they're actually on your computer, and they're on a cloud drive as well. They're in multiple different locations. So let's review a little bit from last week. What adjustment layers do you use to adjust the lightness or darkness of an image? That would be either levels or exposure. What adjustment layer do you use to remove yellow from an image? That would be color balance. What color do you add if you want to remove more yellow? That would be blue. You add blue to remove yellow. What's a way to adjust one part of an image without affecting the other parts of an image? Make a selection. What type of object would be appropriate for a quick mask tool? Remember where you're going to be painting, using your trackpad to paint in your selection. That would be a perfect case for an object that has irregular or bumpy edges, right? Because you can't make smooth curves or straight lines with your quick mask tool. It's really hard to make straight lines only with your quick mask tool. So quick mask tool is for an object that has irregular bumpy edges. What type of object would be good for a pen tool selection? Something with smooth curves and straight lines. And what type of object would be good for a polygon lasso tool? Something with straight lines only. And what's the process for making a quick mask? Hit the letter Q, paint in quick mask mode, hit the letter Q again to turn that quick mask into a selection, and then hit the square with the circle inside of it. So any questions on anything that I've gone over, or the assignment, or anything at all? Alrighty, so let's talk a little bit about your portfolio, since we're getting really, really close to being done with your first design class, and so you'll start thinking about your portfolio. So I put together a little video of some ideas for things that you can include in your portfolio. Hey you guys, periodically during this course, I want to take a moment to kind of make eye contact with you and talk to you about some really important things related to this course and also to your career as a graphic designer. One is, what do you intend to do after you get your degree? A degree is great. A degree kind of gets your foot in the door. But what's gonna get you the job is your portfolio and having a very high quality portfolio. And the fact is, if you don't have a good portfolio, you might not get a job. And these student loans, they're kind of expensive. And so once you graduate, you want to be able to pay off those student loans and not have to worry about your income. And so that's why it's really important to have a good portfolio to get a job. No portfolio, no job. It's pretty much just exactly like that. So let's talk about your portfolio. Now here I have a hard copy portfolio. It's really big like this, and it has my pieces printed out like so, and you can see that these are on kind of a hard matte board. It's glossy, it's really high quality print. But what a lot of you guys are going to want to do first is put together a online portfolio, which is basically like a website of your work. And now, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to talk to you specifically about that. But for now, what I want you guys to think about is what is going to go into your portfolio and what is going to constitute high quality work that will get you hired. So one thing to think about is all of these assignments that you're doing in class. Now, a lot of your 100 level classes like DES104, a lot of those assignments in your classes are like exercises that teach you the tools of the program. So those exercises might not be adequate portfolio pieces. Employers are going to want to see high quality professional looking work, and to get yourself thinking about what that means and what high quality professional work looks like, I'd really encourage you to visit a couple of graphic design websites. For instance, thedesigninspiration.com. You can also go on Pinterest and do a search on Pinterest for graphic design. In fact, I think it's great to have a Pinterest board for graphic design, or even just kind of a lot of different boards such as logo design, typography, illustration, and just start collecting lots of pins on Pinterest. I'll talk a little bit more in the future about Pinterest and how it works. But Pinterest is a great place to go. Also, websites like cgsociety.org, Facebook pages devoted to graphic design, Communication Arts Magazine, and also think about ways that you can freelance while you're in school at the same time. Now, an important thing about freelancing, I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. Some students think that, oh, once they graduate, they can get started freelancing and make a living. It's really, really hard to make a living just by freelancing. That's why I really hope that a lot of you are making your goal to get an actual job or a career in graphic design, working for a company first. But freelancing is totally something that you might want to do while you're in school, because you can take on a few jobs here and there. So one thing that I've recently really enjoyed doing in my freelance work is literary magazines. Here's a couple examples of literary magazines. They hire illustrators and graphic designers as well to illustrate their stories and design their covers and things like that. So you can see in Friction magazine here, that came out last fall. This is one of my stories that I illustrated, not my story, but someone else's story that I illustrated for Friction magazine. And a good place to go to get a list of literary magazines is the Pushcart Prizes. Just do a Google search for Pushcart Prizes and you can check out their Facebook page, which is an award that goes out to the best stories in literary magazines for the year before. And so there's a big old long list of all of the Pushcart Prize prizes that have been awarded to different literary magazines. So that's a great place to go. Go to the websites for different literary magazines. And contact the art director, send them your portfolio, your online portfolio, and see what happens. Maybe you might end up freelancing and doing some illustration work for lit mags, which would be really cool. Another place to go is guru.com, and I'll be talking more about these different places, these freelancing places in our class session today. But I really, really want you guys to think about making high quality portfolio level work in your 200 level classes, and understand that because your 200 level classes are those kind of like portfolio development classes, that means your teacher might take off a few points if your work isn't demonstrating high quality professional level work. But usually your teachers are pretty nice, and if you ask to resubmit an assignment to get a better grade, usually they'll be pretty accommodating. And a lot of instructors will be happy to meet with you in Zoom and talk to you about how you can improve your assignments to make them more portfolio quality. And your teacher can work with you over Zoom, and you guys can work together on getting your work up to that more portfolio quality level. And I am the same way. I'm totally eager to help bring your portfolio pieces to the level that they need to be at. So if you want to meet with me, if you want to talk about your work and how you can improve it, how you can make it more professional level, definitely feel free to send me an email. But also do check out those websites like the Design Inspiration, like Pinterest, CG Society, Communication Arts Magazine. See the type of work that is out there, that is professional level, and then start mimicking the work that you really like, and pretty soon your own style starts to develop. And not only are you making stuff that's following the trends, that's what people are interested in buying, but you're actually developing your own skills as well and developing your own style. So that's my important little speech about thinking about your portfolio. It really is important, because no portfolio, no job, and be sure to back up your work. I'll be talking to you in a little bit about something else really.
Alrighty, so I'm going to open up the rest of the class to questions if you guys have any. If not, you are free to go, and I look forward to seeing your work. Feel free to come to my multi-session on Tuesday and Wednesday if you need some one-on-one help.